Court stalemate continues. Republicans still won't budge, but Democrats are trying to nudge them. And today we're going to look at whether the GOP stonewalling might actually help that guy, Donald Trump. We'll explain the connection. Then the water crisis in Flint, lead in the water system in Newark, same problem possibly in New York City housing projects. Are we looking at the next big infrastructure crisis in America? Also, when Derek Gordon of Seton Hall takes the court today, he'll be the first openly gay player to ever participate in the NCAA tournament. And it's not a big story, which makes it a big story. Does this show how far we've come on social issues? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman in once again for Richard French. Democrats are putting pressure on Republicans to consider President Obama's pick for the Supreme Court. Here's Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid this morning.
Again and again, Republican leaders told Americans that any policy put forward by Democrats was nefarious, simply because it came from President Obama. We've seen this big lie resurface in the last 24 hours as President Obama nominated Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court overwhelmingly needs someone, and the Senate, with a large vote, appointed him, selected him, confirmed him to the U.S. Court of Appeals.
That nominee, Merrick Garland, visited Capitol Hill today to meet with some Democratic leaders, but Republicans were not interested. However, some of them say they might see him after they return home from recess, that in a couple of weeks. So we're still looking at a stalemate on Capitol Hill, at least for now. Let's get to our panel to discuss. Richard Brodsky is here as a former Democratic New York State Assemblyman, now a senior fellow at Demos and a professor at NYU. I salute you, sir. Dominic Carter is with us, political journalist and author. Republican strategist Bill O'Reilly is here, and Scott Levinson is here, president of the Advance Group. Gentlemen, welcome all. Dominic, we talked a little bit about this nomination yesterday. I want to go around the table for everybody else. Your thoughts about the pick and how the GOP is handling this. And since most of the impetus is on the GOP, Bill, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think it's a mistake. I think the Republican Party that typically is a pro-Constitution party needs to observe the Constitution and at least look at the pick, at least go through the process of it. They could reject that pick, but they should go through the process. I think it's a mistake. I think this is handing the Democrats a cudgel to bang us with all year. I think they should have done it a different way.
Scott?
It's a great pick specifically because you have a very hard time arguing on the merits that this nominee shouldn't go to the court. And because on the merits you have no argument, it's very hard for them to sustain what Bill points out as just unconstitutional.
Bill represents the remnants of the Republican Party. Is that a fair thing to say? And I think he put his finger on it. There were other ways to do this. You could meet him, hold a hearing, and vote him down. There would be people who would be criticized for that, but that's doing your job, and then people might disagree with you. That's an easier sell politically. They're afraid of primaries. They're afraid not of just rejecting the guy. They're afraid of showing that they'll give anything Obama does respect, credibility, and process. It's a wonderful mistake. Keep making them. And do the other three Republicans who are left in your faction, bring them in. Bring them in.
We're starting to see a few cracks in the wall a little bit. Lindsey Graham has already said that what the Republicans are doing is unprecedented and probably bad for the party. Chuck Grassley, who said at first I wouldn't meet with any nominee, is now saying I'll probably meet with them after the recess. Dominic, even if because they were so hardline about we're not even considering this thing, is it damaging to Republicans if they then open the door to even have meetings?
Yes, because if they open the door, as Mr. Brodsky has alluded to, it will look like they're caving in. And that's the last thing they need, Republicans, going into the primary season. They are petrified of being primaried, particularly from their right. And so they have dug a hole that did not need to be.
That's right.
McConnell should have never, it was McConnell, I believe, that issued the tweets, Andrew, that Saturday night, as soon as the Supreme Court justice passed away. Yeah. There was no need to jump out there like that.
Yeah, there was no reason to draw a red line in the sand, and you're exactly right. If they back off now, they look weak.
There is a reason, and the reason is that they're looking not at the people of the United States as a whole, they're looking at the right wing of the Republican Party in primaries. See, if that's who you're looking at,
I'm for the right wing.
Even if you're doing that tactically, wouldn't you take on the fight that you suggest and fight the fight on the merits or try and pick a fight on the
This
merits.
is-
but to be totally obstructionist, even those folks who agree
I
with you
got
on
two
the
words for you,
issues.
Scott. Donald Trump. He's carrying an electorate.
You've been using that word.
It's like the answer for everything these days.
It's a pretty good answer, though.
Why
when
are
you're
you
dealing with a
really
lot of
stale,
Republicans.
Donald Trump?
It's a pretty good answer, though.
Why are you
Thank
drinking
you.
so much?
As I was saying, you've got an electorate that wants an angry, outspoken, rejectionist response, and they're getting it presidentially, and they're going to get it in the Senate primaries.
And I guess I totally disagree with at least two of you on the panel. I mean, I'm looking for a conservative judge. We're not going to get one out of this president, but you can't say the Republican Party can't say that it's a pro-Constitution party if it breaks the constitutional rules, and it's just that simple. And there's no way to rationalize it. I mean, we're stuck here now because a line in the sand was drawn that should never have been drawn.
One of the arguments,
reject him.
one of the arguments that I've heard for the rise of Donald Trump is frustration with Washington. That Washington is broken and it's a pox on both parties' houses, and so the outsider, it plays to him and it plays to that voter anger. Scott, does the Republican obstruction of the Supreme Court nominee help Donald Trump?
Yes, it does help Donald Trump, but only because it keeps the attention on what the R's are saying and cameras on Donald Trump to some extent. But Donald Trump is helping himself just fine.
Sure.
And he's dominating every single news cycle. And so to the other extent, this takes a little bit away from that story, which is his story every day in the headlines. And that seems to be working for him just fine.
Richard, what do you think?
I think you're seeing the Senate turn into a bunch of mini Trumps, and the embrace of that attitude by otherwise thoughtful people helps Trump. It legitimizes him.
Is this going to knock him out of the news cycle, Dominic? I mean, I know it takes some headlines away, but it seems like he figures out a way to get into shows like this every day.
Absolutely nothing is going to knock Trump out of the news cycle. He is a master at creating news, and if he is for example, at his, we talked about last night, at his rallies, you know, the protesters are standing up for what they believe in, but Trump will use them as an object just to keep himself, so he will find a reason. Look at what he did to the speaker. Oh, he'll get along with me, or he's going to have so no matter what, Trump ups the ante, Andrew. That's what I'm trying to say on everything. And so I agree with Scott that he's doing just fine. The question is going to be what's going to happen with the news cycle when it's Hillary versus Trump.
Well, I mean, I think Hillary's had the best month of her political life, specifically because of the ugliness, the misogyny, the angry white male things that you see at Trump rallies. If there wasn't a women's vote...
Are you suggesting that the women aren't angry in the Trump camp? Trump goes beyond gender.
No. I'm arguing that if there wasn't a women's vote before for Hillary, that he's driving women to her.
Which you saw a poll today.
I want to get to one other point on the Supreme Court pick, and that is I've heard from some progressives and some Bernie supporters who frankly are a little upset with the selection of the moderate Supreme Court nominee, that they feel like it's either Obama giving up or playing politics given the roadblock that they're facing. What would you say, Richard, to Bernie supporters or progressives who think, it's not Kagan, it's not Sotomayor, it's a middle-of-the-road guy?
Bourgeois is what I would say. Okay?
I knew that was coming.
This guy is perfectly qualified to serve by temperament, by intellect, and by ideology. The notion that there's some left-wing genius out there who's better than him is nonsense. There are other people who are also qualified and who Obama could have picked, but it's a fine choice.
You don't see the argument for some progressives that Obama left some aspect of the liberal left off, on the table in his selection?
I don't know that the trick in picking a Supreme Court judge is picking the most left-wing or the most right-wing judge. There are things like temperament, intellect, experience, judgment that count as much in a judge as does ideology.
Scott, you agree?
100%. I mean, Richard's right. He's a perfectly fine choice, and you're always going to have critics, gadflies, who say, well, what if you went this way? You should have gone on this issue. You should have used this as your litmus test. The the president made a smart choice.
Yeah, it's a smart choice.
A competent choice.
Politically
And
smart
you
choice,
know
yeah.
what? In these political times, why hand an issue out there where you're going to have a lightning rod on one candidate because he's too far to the left? Why create that?
Very
for the
quickly
party?
around the table, does he actually get confirmed to the court, Bill?
No.
Scott?
Yes.
Dominic?
Maybe a few months from
Maybe?
now. That's my honest political
Maybe
assessment.
not.
No,
Take a
no,
position,
no.
Dominic.
Well,
Make a judgment. Be a judge.
But I strive to be accurate when I say something, Mr. Brodsky.
But yeah, you can't lose with maybe.
Okay,
This
but
is a
guys-
New Year's resolution.
Okay, well, wait, guys. So I'm supposed to jump off the ledge just to please you
yes,
guys?
that was the question.
Okay, well.
Excuse me, you're stepping on my time
you,
here.
you cut me off. But go ahead. You got the floor. You got the floor, Mr.
Richard, you got the
Brodsky.
calm.
Yes, and either he'll get confirmed after the election.
Another day, another ridiculous comment from Donald Trump and another ploy to try to stop him. We're going to tell you about the latest group forming with the sole intention of looking to deny Donald Trump the nomination.